Welcome to Eye on the Biz, a television program for international, regional, and domestic events, and a casual business talk. Today, we are at the office of the National Broadcasting and Telecommunication Commission, or NBTC, to attend a seminar on media regulation in digital era, practice and lesson learned from the United States. So now, let me bring you to the seminar at the NBTC office.
Biz Overview.
Today's event is a seminar on media regulation in digital era, practice and lesson learned from the United States of America, organized by the National Broadcasting and Telecommunication Commission, or NBTC. The seminar aims to have Thai authority and the public learn from the experience in the United States, as the NBTC plans to auction 48 channels of digital television later this year. In starting the migration from analog to digital system of Thai television, the US only completed its transition in 2009. The NBTC invited two American speakers to this forum. One is Jonathan Levy, Deputy Chief Economist of Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, the regulator of interstate and international communication by radio, television, wire, satellite, and cable in the United States. The other is Timothy Carr, Senior Director of Strategy of Free Press, a non-partisan organization in the United States, advocating for universal and affordable Internet access, diverse media ownership, vibrant public media, and quality journalism. The two American speakers are joined by Thawatchai Chitpanan and Supinya Klangnarong, two of the commissioners of the NBTC. Other Thai academics and media operators also join various panel discussions at the seminar. In the Biz Chat, I will talk to Dr. Jonathan Levy, Deputy Chief Economist of Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, of the US government, about its transition from analog to digital television, which was completed not so long ago. So now please join me in the Biz Chat. Thanks for joining Eye on the Biz. Since you are one of the key speakers here at this seminar organized by the NBTC here, and today, in the past today, the seminar is talking about media regulation in the eras of digitalization, and we are learning experience from your country, which is the US. Could you start by telling us about the period when the US switched from analog to digital?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here to discuss these issues with you. The Federal Communications Commission, of which I'm a staff member, has quite an extensive program of dialogue with our regulatory counterparts in other countries. So it's really been a pleasure to be able to meet and speak with colleagues at the NBTC here in Bangkok. Before I begin, I need to remind you while I do work for the FCC, any opinion that I'm expressing will be my opinion alone and shouldn't be attributed to the FCC or any other member of its staff. Now, the United States was one of the first countries to initiate and complete the transition to digital television, and it actually took us quite a long time, and I think it took us a lot longer than it's going to take Thailand and other countries that are making that transition now. You really need to go back more than 20 years to find the beginning of the technical research that led to a standard for digital television transmissions. In fact, the original research with regard to high-definition television actually involved an analog standard for HDTV that was developed in Japan. However, by the early 1990s, research had progressed to the degree that a digital standard was available, quite a flexible standard that could permit high-definition television or even multiple program streams of standard definition television. So it was in the mid-1990s when the United States adopted its technical standard for digital television. It was in the late 1990s when our TV stations first started building out their digital facilities, and although we had an initial goal of completing the transition by the end of 2006, in fact, it was not until June 2009, June 12th, 2009, that we completed our transition from analog to digital television. And so you can see that it took quite a long time from the first development of the technical standards to the service rules to the build-out of facilities to the completion of the process. But as I say, in part due to the experience of countries such as the United States and in part due to the advancements in and regularization of technology, my expectation is that countries undergoing the transition today will do it more quickly than we did.
So for the US now, the switchover now has entirely completed.
The switchover entirely completed for our full power television stations. We have a secondary class of stations called low power TV, which has a later deadline. And also, by the way, it's important to remember when we're talking about a digital transition that there are multiple video platforms available in the US as well as many other countries. The transition that I'm talking about now had to do with free-to-air terrestrial television. We also have direct-to-home satellite service that was digital since it started in 1994. And we also have extensive cable television, and the transition to digital cable was something that was initiated by the industry itself, not with FCC regulation. And now, on a voluntary basis, virtually all of our cable systems offer digital service, and a very large fraction of our subscribers choose to take only digital service, although some of our systems still offer both analog and digital service.
So for the switchover, it involves changing television set from analog to digital. So how did the U.S. government subsidize the change? Or how could
the U.S. government did subsidize the change in a particular way. First of all, our subsidies were directed almost completely to consumers, to citizens. The broadcasters who had to invest in new facilities generally did that without any sort of subsidy, although a very, very small subsidy was given to some of our public television stations. But our commercial television stations made their own investments in facilities for digital. In terms of consumers, as you probably know, there's a couple of ways that one could make a transition from analog to digital. One could purchase a new digital television receiver, and generally people who wish to take advantage of the increased quality, in particular the higher resolution picture of digital, they found it appropriate to purchase a new TV that had a larger screen, flat panel display, something that would show off high definition to great advantage. However, if all you were interested in doing is maintaining your previous level of television service, a digital to analog converter box, sometimes referred to as a set-top box, is all that was necessary. And the U.S. government chose to direct its subsidy just at the converter boxes, not at new TV sets. Other countries have made different decisions on that. And the subsidy consisted of 2 coupons, each of them worth $40 US. They could be used, had to be used separately, so for 2 different converter boxes. The reason being that most homes in the United States have more than one television receiver in them. The converter boxes that were eligible for the subsidy were specified by the U.S. government. There's actually, I work for the Federal Communications Commission. There's another part of the U.S. government called the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, part of our Commerce Department. Congress gave them the task of supervising the subsidy program. So we had coupon-eligible converter boxes where everyone knew that they would be able to fulfill the basic functions necessary. Those were produced independently in the private marketplace, certified by the FCC that they met the proper technical requirements, and then sold through the normal retail distribution chain. In the United States, we decided that everyone would be eligible for the subsidy. So each household, regardless of income or other status, was eligible to receive 2 coupons upon request. They would then bring the coupon to the retail store and use it to purchase the set-top box. There was no regulation of the prices of these set-top boxes. We basically relied on competition among manufacturers to keep the prices reasonably low. And there was a range of prices in the marketplace, but it was generally possible to acquire a set-top box for not much more than $40. So the coupon brought the price down very, very low, almost to a net price of 0. It's also worth mentioning that when we received the application for the set-top box coupon, we looked at the address of the applicant, and when we sent the coupons back to that applicant, using their postal code, we also enclosed a list of the retailers in that person's area that had committed to carry some set-top boxes. So we tried to make it as easy as possible for people to actually acquire the set-top box. The third way that one could handle the transition, you could buy a new TV, you could get a digital to analog converter box. However, if you subscribe to one of our pay TV services, and a very, very large fraction of our population does, around 90%, you didn't have to do anything at all with respect to those TVs, because the cable system or the direct-to-home satellite system would be providing you with the digital feed anyway. So that's kind of the way the subsidy operated.
I wonder, for the coupon thing you just mentioned, for 2 coupons per household, was there any difficulty or controversy during that period of time?
Well, on the whole, it worked very well. However, initially, the instructions that were given to this other government agency were to have the coupons valid for only a limited period of time. And the idea behind it, there was a good idea behind it. We didn't want people to wait till the last moment to get their set-top box, make sure that they could properly hook it up and operate it, etc. However, what happened was that in some cases, people did not act immediately, and their coupons expired. And this did cause a certain amount of controversy, and it's one of the factors that led our Congress to change the rules with regard to coupons, so you could apply again if your coupon had expired. And this may also have been one of the reasons that our conversion date was moved back by Congress from February 2009 to June 2009. I think, this is my feeling, that Congress wanted to make sure that citizens had every opportunity to acquire the converter boxes, hook them up, test them, and make sure they were really, really ready for the transition. But on the whole, I think it worked quite well.
So Dr. Levy have told us about the initial period of the transition from analog to digital television in the U.S. In the next bit, he will discuss us more about how the U.S. government educated their people during the transition and what kind of issue the Thai regulator should bear in mind for the transition here in Thailand. So please stay tuned with us. About the subsidy. So how the U.S. government then educate people, prepare the people for the switch over?
So we had a very extensive public information campaign that involved not only the FCC and other government resources, but also some of the regulated industries and other interested industries as well. We began our education campaign around 2007, so a couple of years in advance of our transition date. As a consumer-friendly agency, the FCC has always had methods for informing consumers about its activities, and also methods by which consumers can gain information from us. So we have a toll-free telephone number for inquiries. We've always had that. However, we knew that as the transition approached, the number of calls would go up quite substantially. So we used some of our appropriated funds to engage a private company to expand significantly the capacity of our call center. We also, by the way, made sure to have customer service representatives who could speak languages in addition to English, so it would be a very user-friendly process. We have a website, and in fact it's still up if anyone's interested, dtv.gov, which is our consumer information website, filled with publications and fact sheets, some of them translated into as many as 28 languages, so people could go there as well. FCC staff were asked to volunteer to go into the field and provide information directly to civic organizations, senior citizen centers, etc. And I am one of perhaps 200 or 300 staff who answered that call. So that was another way that we provided information. We also, the FCC, also through its regulatory authority, placed some requirements on the broadcasters, the television broadcasters, to provide information through public service announcements during their daily broadcasts, through providing walking information centers and other related things. Of course, it's important to remember that the broadcasters have their own commercial interest in making sure people knew about the transition because they wanted to maintain their audience. So while we did place certain requirements on them, they also had their own voluntary incentives to provide information. Our pay TV companies were required to provide written information in the monthly bill about the upcoming transition. And we also placed some requirements on manufacturers and retailers of consumer electronics equipment. With regard to the manufacturers, after a certain date in 2007, we started requiring all new television sets manufactured or brought into the country to have the digital circuitry included in them. It was phased in, starting with the very, very large screen sets. We're adding this function, made a very small percentage increase in the price, but eventually it applied even to the smaller TV sets, and they had to be labeled. in many cases, retailers had, at this time, analog receivers in the warehouse and inventory, and they were still allowed to sell those. However, we imposed a labeling requirement. There had to be a label that said, after the digital transition, this television receiver will not function unless you add a converter box. So that was another sort of an information requirement. And then the other thing we did was contract directly with some private organizations to provide information to the public, and also some assistance to the public. There are certain segments of the public who might have had difficulty installing the converter box. In some cases, it turned out that in addition to the converter box, it was actually necessary for consumers to adjust or even replace their receiving antenna. And that was difficult for some people. Generally speaking, older individuals, some of them are very, very technologically savvy, but not all of them are. People with disabilities is another group that we wanted to make sure had access to the assistance that they needed. So we had a very extensive effort, and we tried to target it to those segments of the population that we thought were most in need.
I would like to also touch a little bit on this issue of digital dividend. In switching from analog to digital, you have a certain amount of frequency unused. So how did the U.S. government deal with those unused frequency?
Right. So we were able to recover through the transition quite a substantial amount of spectrum, a total of 108 megahertz, out of an initial roughly 400 megahertz that had been assigned to televisions. A very, very large amount was reclaimed. The U.S. Congress gave us some instructions on what to do with it. In particular, they initially told us to assign 24 megahertz to public safety use, which we did, and our public safety spectrum is licensed administratively, not through an auction. As a matter of fact, later in the process, an additional 10 megahertz was assigned for public safety through the through congressional instruction. However, the other spectrum, 74 megahertz, was auctioned and assigned for other valuable commercial uses, principally, but not exclusively, for wireless broadband. And you can see the magnitude of the digital dividend by looking at what the proceeds of the auction was, and it was roughly 19 billion US dollars. So obviously, we were able to make a very, very valuable improvement in resource allocation. Now, the other side of the digital dividend, you might want to say, is the improved television service that became available. We improved the quality of the picture, the quality of the sound, and also the number of program streams that could be made available. So that's the digital dividend, at least from a U.S. perspective.
Since you might be aware that here in Thailand, we are also in the process of migrating from analog to digital.
Yes.
As we come from a country that already have passed through that experience, do you have any note that you want to say to the regulator here?
Well, I've had the opportunity to talk about digital transition with foreign colleagues from many, many different countries, and I do think that there is some value to studying the experience of another country. However, I want to make very clear that my position is not that everyone should do exactly as the United States did. I don't think it's appropriate to impose sort of a one-size-fits-all approach to the digital transition. But there are some things that that are kind of common. I think it's very, very important to set a hard date, a fixed date for the transition. It makes the information providing process a lot easier. There's something to focus on. We know that many people are procrastinators. They'll wait till the last minute to do what they need to do. And indeed, even after our transition, we still got a small number of calls from people, what happened to my television? So having a focal point and a hard date is very, very important. I think it's important before you get to that hard date to sort of test the system out. So we did that in two ways. We had two of our markets. The U.S. is divided up into into 210 separate local television markets. Two of those 210 markets made the transition earlier, and they served as kind of experiments or laboratories so we could see what kind of problems arise, what kind of questions come up, what's the most effective way of sort of answering those questions. So I personally think it's a good idea to have a laboratory or two for an early transition. And the other thing that was extremely useful was the so-called soft test. So the way it worked in the United States, and I know this is Thailand's plan as well, there's going to be a period of time of so-called simulcasting, where each TV station will be transmitting an analog stream and a digital stream simultaneously until the transition is completed. So we tried to get the TV stations in each of our local markets to cooperate on a soft test, which means at a particular point in time, generally during prime time when viewing is high, all of the stations agreed to turn off their normal analog programming for an interval, say 3 minutes or 4 minutes, and post a message. If you're seeing this message, your television set is not yet ready for the digital transition. Here's a toll-free phone number you can call. Here's a website you can go to.
Dr. Levy, today I would like to thank you very much for joining our program. You have fly a long way from the U.S. and I hope that you will have a safe trip back home. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
You can see that even in the USA, it took a long time for its transition from analog to digital television. As our own country is also in the transitional period, we can certainly learn something from the experience in the USA. Thanks for watching iNabis today. I hope to see you again next week. Bye for now.